to the Sustainable Napier Committee meeting for 24th of March 2022. Could I get the CEO to do our opening karakia, please?
Tēnā koe, Mr. Chair, tēnā koutou elected members, community members and staff. Me noi tātou, tūtaua mai e runga, tūtaua mai e raro, tūtaua mai e roto, tūtaua mai e waho. Kia tau ai te mauri tū, te mauri ora ki te katoa, haumie, huie, taike.
Thank you. Do I have any apologies, please? I've received Councillor Crown and Councillor Tapani and Councillor Taylor to be late. Do I have any others? Do I have a mover for that, please? Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Bogue. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, or hand in the air? Yes, carried. I'd like to welcome, sorry, we'll just cover any conflicts of interest. No conflicts of interest. I'd like to welcome Andrea Manley, the General Manager, Strategy and Innovation for the Napier Port, who's going to give us a 20-minute presentation. We've extended it from 10 to 20. And I heard her give a presentation last week to the Land Transport, and I think the port, through Andrea's got a lot of information to offer us for us as leaders in the city, and also for the people watching.
Right.
I will add that this is...
Oh, no, sorry.
Okay, I've got to say this is live on Facebook and recorded. So, Andrea, it's in your hands now.
Thank you, Councillor Price. I'm just going to share my screen. It won't be a minute. So would you mind confirming that you can share, see the PowerPoint that I've just displayed?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. As Councillor Price said, I presented to the Hawke's Bay Regional Council Transport Committee a couple of weeks ago. And what they were interested in understanding is what's Napier Port's strategy overall, and then how does that strategy translate into the transport network and the level of alignment between Napier Port strategy and our land transport strategy for the Hawke's Bay region. So what I thought I would do is use the same presentation as that meeting itself. But I've also shared the same presentation, but because of the time, I won't go into a lot of detail that gets to the transport network, but keep the presentation more around our overall business strategy and how that aligns with the regional land transport plan. I'm going to try and remain quite quick, because I know that the value is also around being able to ask questions and have a conversation. But overall, for this morning, I thought I would provide an introduction to Napier Port, also myself, just an overview of our overall business strategy, and then have a look at what we call our networked infrastructure goal, which includes the landside transport network to and from the port, and then how that compares with our land transport plan. In the presentation that I gave to the Transport Committee, we also delved into the work the Ministry of Transport is doing around the National Freight Study. So I'll leave that part out this morning, but I've left it in the slide pack in case you're interested. And so my role within Napier Port, it was a newly created role coming up to about 2.5 years ago around strategy and innovation. I came to Napier Port with a deep supply chain background. So my previous role was managing the supply chain for Goodman Fielder, which is a local and import manufacturing and distribution company. A lot of you may know Goodman Fielder through brands like Vogel's Bread and Yoplait yogurt, and from memory, it's about 20% of what sits in the supermarket is through Goodman Fielder. So a very deep understanding of New Zealand's overall supply chain network. So the reason my role was created at the port is historically we were a very efficient organisation within the port gates. But we also had a reputation for a level of inflexibility when it came to customers. And so prior to me joining the port, we refreshed our overall business strategy with the intention of opening that efficiency that sat within the port gates and offering it out to customers, and to start to look at the overall supply chain network and value for cargo owners and how we could achieve that. So my role, that's the strategy part of my role, is our overall business direction. Innovation is translating some of the innovation we've developed inside the port gate to extend it outside into customers. And I also lead our IT team, and the reason for that is a lot of innovation today is also around use of technology to get there. So overall, the intention for Napier Port is around building a sustainable and economically viable future supply chain network. And that's for our region, and our intention is to do that in partnership with other stakeholders. So we don't believe that we should do that on our own, but we are in a really good position to have visibility to connect import and export regions with the local network, and then help design supply chain solutions that achieves value for cargo owners overall. And that the sustainable and economically viable way is that historically supply chain networks in New Zealand were quite vertical in the way they operate. So I'll give you a practical example around that. Is if I'm an exporter in our region, and for example, if I'm an apple exporter, I bring an empty container into my manufacturing site, I fill it up, and then I send that full container back to the port. Meanwhile, if I'm an importer in our region, I bring a full container of product into the port, into my site, I unload that full container, and I send an empty one back to the port. So what happens in traditional supply chains is that half of our volume of transport is air, empty containers either to or from. Where the port sits is we actually have visibility of all import and export cargo into our region, and we can start to match the import and export cargo and take away that waste from the network. So in essence, transporting of air, and that reduces the cost of the overall supply chain, and we share that value back to the stakeholders. So that line around building a sustainable and economically viable supply chain is relating to that. What we do recognise, though, is that our landside infrastructure network needs to be developed to be able to create that, and particularly around resilience and choice for our region. We used to operate 3 trains a day that connected our region into Palmerston North. And that was fully utilised post Kaikoura earthquake when Centreport closed, and a lot of cargo came to us as it couldn't go out through Centreport. And then over time, those rail services dropped off, and predominantly it was road transport that came into the port. And I'm sure you all as within Napier City could see that. And so what we're now focusing on is then development of the rail. So from a environmental perspective, that's also benefit for us in our region, but it also takes some of that freight transport off the road. So we've now got our own Napier Port train that's running 5 days a week, and it connects Napier into Palmerston North and then to the rest of the North Island. That third bullet point there in the introduction of the reason of why we're doing this is that some of you may have seen, if you've been to the port or to the top of Bluff Hill, the construction of our new 6th wharf. So the 6th wharf itself is needed just to support the local growth within our region, and our business case was built upon that. But our thinking is, with that asset there, if we can establish a network which links us to the central and lower North Island, we start to sweat that asset. We get further cargo through that wharf, which then helps boost our local economy through through jobs on the port, but also the transport network to get to and from. The overall objective in that last bullet point there around the introduction for us is absolutely around future-proofing the central and lower North Island and our connections to global markets, and then back into the rest of the North Island of New Zealand. So that's sort of an introduction of what I'll talk about in the next few slides. This slide here around Napier Port itself, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. It's more about some statistics. If any of you are not familiar around our size and scale, the ones that I will really pick out that not a lot of people are aware of is we are the 4th largest container port in New Zealand. And then we're 2nd largest by log tons. Usually it's pretty close with Gisborne. Some years we're larger, some years Gisborne is larger, and last year we just snuck in with 3 million tonnes of logs. Over 80% of our cargo comes within a 100-kilometre radius of the port, but that developing a resilient network for the future and connecting us to the central North Island, part of that is because in the central North Island, only 34% of that cargo comes through Napier Port, and the rest goes elsewhere, so either down to Wellington, up to Tauranga, and even up to Auckland. So now we've got 3 trains per day operating between us and Palmerston North, and we've got the daily train between Wairoa and Napier Port. And part of the thing that we're cognizant of, actually I will switch to this next slide, around our overall business strategy is one of mutually reliant and also mutually beneficial. So we say within our purpose that it is about building a thriving region by connecting our region to the world. And that sort of mutually beneficial but also mutually reliant is that we have such a strong horticultural economy in our region. If that wasn't there, we wouldn't have a reason for being within Napier Port itself. But the other way around, if there wasn't a port in Napier, the cost to get our horticultural product to market would be prohibitive, particularly on our land networks within New Zealand. So moving all of that product through Centre Port or through Tauranga Port or up to Auckland. So we realise as a port ourselves, our deep connection into our region and our community. And if it wasn't for our region and our community, we wouldn't have a reason for being. So that's why we have our purpose statement around building a thriving region. And therefore what happens is through that building of the thriving region, we also thrive as a port. Our business strategy is also one that's very much about growth. And that growth I've defined on can you see my mouse when I move it, by the way, or am I perfect? The growth is on the right hand side of this slide here. So we're keeping a very well-rounded and what we like to think balanced objective around our overall strategy. So that growth, yes, is commercial growth, because commercial growth ensures the overall economic prosperity for our region. It brings jobs into our region, and it means that our port remains sustainable. But growth also sits in the areas of growth or improvement in our safety outcomes, improvement in our well-being of our team, development of the skills and capability of our team. And when we refreshed our strategy last year, what we've also done is we've pulled sustainability, which previously was one of our other goals, along with the other 4 in that pictorial there. We've put it down as part of our foundation. So now as an organisation, we recognise that we can't achieve that purpose unless we focus on our culture and the development of our team, but also on our delivering to our sustainability objectives as well. On the sustainability side, what we started is by surveying our internal port staff and our customers around what's important for them regarding sustainability. And we've aligned ourselves with the UN SDG sustainability objectives that we can make a real difference on. And part of the start of that you may or may not be aware of is the development of the Marine Cultural Health Program that we've been working on for the past couple of years. So that has been developed with local iwi, and it's its first in New Zealand. So there has been collaborative projects around cultural health in other areas of the environment, but not within marine. So that's now being developed. An agreed measuring process to understand the health of our marine environment from a usability, but also from a technical perspective. And then we'll start measuring and seeing the change over time, and then adjusting actions to make sure that their impact is minimised and we continue with a sustainable marine environment. Other areas of our sustainability is what we are focusing on, as I mentioned, is what we can make a real impact on and what we can control in the areas that sit within our expertise, which is why it is focused around marine. Having said that, part of our sustainability objective is also around carbon zero by 2050. And we're already implementing things like the use of electric vehicles where it makes sense. Can get a bit challenging for us at the moment around some of the life cycles of some of our equipment, like our tugs and our pilot boats, are very long. So we will be replacing and using more sustainable fuel options, but as we replace those assets as opposed to sell and then buy immediately. So I do feel like I'm whizzing through this, but I will continue to do so. The next slide is then specifically picking up on our networked infrastructure goal. What we had conversations with some of our customers last year when we were looking at our overall strategy and what we focus on. And some of our customers said to us, we were actually quite surprised with it, which is, Napier Port, you shouldn't compare yourselves with other ports in New Zealand. You should compare yourselves with other supply chains. So with the refresh of your strategy and the focus on customers, customer solutions, and customers in the definition of the people that actually own the cargo, they said you're smashing it. And so to add value back into us and our economy, expand your solution network. And so that's why we are focusing on that networked infrastructure. So we support the supply chain solutions for importers and exporters, not only on the seaside, but back onto the land side as well. And that one is very much about collaboration. So this slide just takes you through some of the examples of what we've achieved so far. Hopefully you've seen the impact of some of them, particularly around the vehicle booking system, which is taking congestion, truck traffic congestion out on the entrances to the port. And we've also reconfigured the gates so we can hold more trucks off the road, excuse me, inside the port gates. The implementation of the B double trucks, which carry 2 40-foot containers, which has reduced the truck transport between the port and our container yard in Thames Street. And we're also moving log traffic in the evenings after hours to take that congestion off the road. So this slide just takes you through some of the examples of the things that we've achieved already. Then the next slide takes you through the plan. So what are we working on at the moment and what we'll be working on in the future? I will sum it up by this picture on the left, which is really showing that our overall plan that we're working on now and into the future is one about connecting our region into the networks across the rest of the Central and Lower North Island. I think particularly important, we're focusing on the network and into the Central North Island with now what's happening on State Highway 5 and the reduction of the speed limit to 80 kilometres an hour. It does impact freight. Trucks don't get as many truck turns in a day, which increases the supply chain cost for cargo owners. So to collaborate and work on the network that goes into the central North Island, I think is particularly important for us as a region. So I'm not going to talk to the next two slides, but I'll leave them there if you're interested. What they cover is, I did have a look at the Hawke's Bay Regional Council Land Transport Plan and our plan, and have just highlighted on the next slide that there's definitely areas where we're completely aligned, and I can see that we can work together. So 9:20, sort of bang on. Hopefully that was useful for you. I'll hand it back to you, Councillor Price, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Do we have any questions? You'll have to speak up because I can't see you. I take it there's no questions? Okay, well, thank you very much, Andrea. That was very informative of where the port's heading. And will that PowerPoint be sent out?
Yes, I have already sent it through to Anna, so yes, feel free to share it.
Okay.
And yeah, we're very proud of our port and our place within Napier City. So if anyone is interested to come and have a look, please do let me know.
Very good. Thank you very much, Andrea. Thank you.
Bye.
Right, we'll move on. Is there any announcements by the Mayor?
You just wanted to take a moment to send our thoughts to Gisborne District Council, and who of course have had some significant flooding and declared a state of emergency yesterday. So we will be supporting them in any way we can, and thankfully we weren't as badly hit here, although of course we did still have some significant rain ourselves. So encourage community members, if they do have any concerns with infrastructure in their neighbourhoods, to ensure they report those through to us. But yeah, thinking of Gisborne during this time.
Thank you very much. I just have one announcement. Just congratulations to Deborah Stewart on her appointment to Director of Infrastructure. Well done. She doesn't have to put a R or whatever it is next to her name. Is there any minor matters? No minor matters. So announcements by management, and I think Deborah might have a couple.
Thanks, Councillor Price. Just a couple of updates from me. Team worked pretty hard overnight to make sure that we were able to cope with the rain. No significant issues or anything particularly that caught us off guard. They're watching the forecast today. It is still flicking around a bit, so we're going to do our absolute best to make sure that that doesn't have any negative impact on our community. We have resolved a number of issues recently, which means some of the things that we might have traditionally seen in terms of street flooding have been sorted out, so we're pretty stoked about that. But yeah, we'll keep you posted, or Steph will keep you posted as we work through the next couple of days. I did just undertake, and I'm going to circulate some information to you on this, on the top 5 water projects, just so that you're up to date with what's happening there. So as you know, the low manganese drinking water project is progressing really well. So that's the bore work we're doing. We're still absolutely on schedule to have that sorted by the 31st of June. So you'll be pleased about that, as we are. We're boxing on with the Pandora Industrial Pipeline Remediation Project. Tenders are coming in next week on that one. And once the contract has been awarded, the project will take about 12 months. So likely completion is May next year. So hopefully we can meet that deadline. The Fire Flows project at Bayview is well underway. So we're still just cracking on with that one, and it's going really well. We did lose a few days due to wet weather, but we've got that one largely sorted. The generators have been ordered and got a lead time of about 4 months now, and we know that's a critical piece of work because it was one of our responses in relation to the November 2020 flood, just to create a bit more resilience across our management of those wet weather events. And we're carrying on with the stormwater outlet water quality improvement work. Yeah, so there's lots of work going on in the water space, but I'll circulate or get Anna to put some notes on the hub for you. Thanks, Councillor Price, that's all I have.
Does anyone have any questions? Councillor
Yes,
Bowe.
I do, if that's all right. Yeah.
Yes.
Deborah, how are things looking for the cricket? How
Oh,
are things looking for the cricket tomorrow night, and when might we know for sure, one way or the other, about McLean Park?
it's a good question, Councillor Bowe. You can guarantee if we've got international cricket, we'll have rain. My understanding seems just to be the way it works for us. So the team will be doing their absolute best. I think it's optimistic, given the amount of rain we've had, and it's not going anywhere. It's kind of sitting there. So the drainage in the park is working beautifully. Phil will have a magic wicket prepared. The challenge will be to stop the rain, I imagine. So sorry, that's probably really unhelpful, but we've got everything crossed.
Does our CEO have something to add to that? I saw your hand up.
Thank you, through the chair. So just to provide a little more context on the forecast, we do have a bit of a reprieve this morning, but the forecast is at the moment, and Deborah has mentioned that they are quite changeable. However, the forecast at the moment are expecting it to become quite heavy again this afternoon and this evening. We can expect around another 110 to 150 millimetres of rain through this afternoon and tonight. So to Councillor Bogue's question, forecast has been changing a lot. We'd be hoping for some sunshine tomorrow, but we still have some rainfall to work through yet. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Yes, Steph. Debs.
Sorry, Councillor Price, just on the forecast issue, there's been a massive amount of rain in the hills, as you will well know. So we're working really closely with the regional council to make sure that we're helping them, or helping each other resolve those issues of that downstream effect of that rain in the hills.
Thank you. Is there any other management announcements? No? Okay, so we'll move to confirmation of minutes for Sustainable Napier Committee meeting on 10th of February 2022. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Simpson, seconded by Councillor Crystal. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. And we have a mover for the extraordinary Sustainable Napier Committee meeting held on 17th of February 2022. Do I have a mover, please? Mayor Wise, seconded by Councillor Simpson. All those in favour, please say aye or raise your hand. And against? Carried. Right, we'll move on to item 1, Integrated Trade Waste and Waste Bylaw consultation process, and Cameron Burton and Caitlin Egan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Your Worship. Good morning, councillors, staff and members of the public. This report relates to a renewal of the Trade Waste and Wastewater Bylaw for Napier City. We realise that there's quite significant public interest in this topic, so we have brought the renewal of this forward. Huge amount of work has gone into this. Other councils sometimes take 3.5 years to develop a renewal as robust as this, and we've managed to do it in the space of a year, which we're quite proud of. Today we're asking for a decision of council through the Sustainable Napier Committee in relation to this, based on the timeframes that we're trying to achieve. And this relates to the public consultation using the special consultative procedure, which is legislated and a robust way of getting the feedback from the community that we seek to obtain. Just to give some background, the councillors have workshopped this on a couple of occasions so far, so you are well aware of the intention of this. However, the documentation that is attached to this paper is significant, and I appreciate your time in reviewing that. It is all necessary in relation to the robust processes that we're going through. What we're doing is we are proposing that we combine and integrate the trade waste and wastewater bylaws because the linkage of the two systems is well known. Trade waste in Napier has had a bylaw since 2014. Solutions and technology and incentives have changed significantly since that time. So we endeavour to bring this up to speed with current regimes. And there has been a lot of work done in the background to ensure that the costs of treating and disposing and running the infrastructure of our wastewater and trade waste systems is very well researched, and we have good knowledge of that now, which means that we can have the opportunity to pass on the costs to those who use the system in a much better way. In relation to the wastewater drainage bylaw, that is a bylaw that came into effect in 2014, and that is overdue for a renewal. So it makes sense to combine the two together to enact the bylaw in relation to those two uses of our infrastructure. As technical expert for this, I will now introduce Caitlin Egan just to have a chat through the main changes in the proposed bylaw. And if you have any questions for her, we will endeavour to answer those through the chair.
Morena, tēnā koutou. So yeah, as Cameron said, I'll just jump right in and talk through the main changes that are proposed in this draft bylaw. So as Cameron's already mentioned, we are proposing to integrate the trade waste and wastewater bylaws because they cover the same network and they are covered by the same regional council consent to discharge treated wastewater into Hawke's Bay. So it just makes sense to combine those. Under the bylaw, we're proposing that there will sit an administration manual, the existing code of practice, and a charging model. And these will be working documents that contain technical details and processes that may need to be updated more regularly than the bylaw itself. We're also proposing some new categories for trade waste, and that just allows us to cover all users of the trade waste network as opposed to only the high users, which are covered by the current bylaw. We know that cumulative effects of smaller commercial premises are causing issues in some areas, for example, in the CBD where we're flushing sewers every weekend currently. So it just allows us to have a better level of control over what's going into the network. The bylaw seeks to incentivise the use of water and therefore the creation of wastewater in a more responsible way, both environmentally and culturally. So we're trying to look at water from a more holistic approach. And there's a big focus on cleaner production, which expects continual improvement from trade waste users and just creates the expectation that sites will keep up with technological advances and continuously improve their discharge. There will also be financial incentives to perform well. So this will come from the charging model, and that's based on a user pays approach. So it's supposed to be fair, which means if a site is treating their wastewater to a very high quality, they should pay less for the use of the network because it costs us less to convey and treat that wastewater. So there's a gradual rollout proposed. There are varying changes depending on which industry we're talking about. So they need to be given time, and we will be taking an educational approach for the first few years, just to try and ensure that everybody knows the reasons why we're asking them to do what we are, and they have time to comply. So we are hoping to have this bylaw adopted on the 14th of July this year, but the only change that will come into force on that date will be for existing consent holders, and we'll be using the charging model for quality purposes. On the 1st of December, we're proposing that all consented trade waste discharges will need to register with us. That will be free of charge, and it just means that we can start to categorise all of the trade waste premises in Napier. And then the 1st of July next year, we've proposed that grease trap and tanker requirements will need to be complied with. So those will take a little bit of work, both from our side and from the operator's side. And also we're proposing that the new charging model and new rates calculations will commence on that date, but we can remain flexible with that, taking into consideration what's happening with COVID and how well industries have bounced back. So the recommendation is that the proposed draft bylaw is adopted for public consultation, which we are ready to pull the trigger on this coming Monday. So yeah, that's a really quick high-level summary of the proposed changes. If anyone has any questions.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Councillor Bowe?
Yes, thank you very much for that. How does our proposal draft bylaw compare with other local authorities, particularly in this area?
Thank you, Councillor Bowe. Yes, we have modelled our bylaw on the recent one done in Queenstown Lakes, because their approach, we quite liked their approach. They integrated all of their Three Waters bylaws and had the administration manual sitting underneath. So there was a fair bit of consultation with my counterparts down there to figure out what works well, what doesn't. I do have regular contact with Hastings District Council, and we adopted things that they do that make sense for us as well, just for a consistency across our border approach, as many of our operators will operate in both districts. We've also had some consultation with Gisborne, and we've adopted some things that they do on kind of an operational level that work quite well. So wherever we can and wherever it makes sense for us, we have tried to align with the way other councils do it, particularly regionally, because I see that if and when Three Waters come in, it will make their job a lot easier if we're all doing very similar things, and we can bring ourselves into line with them. It just makes a lot of sense.
Thank you, very sensible approach.
Thank you. Any other questions? I'm just looking through, I've got to go through two things. Okay, do I have a mover for the officer's recommendation, please? Councillor Simpson, seconded by Councillor Brown. Would anyone like to speak on that?
Yeah, I'm happy to go first through you, Mr. Chair. The draft bylaw is both practical and aspirational, and I think it's a credit to staff for having taken the measures that they have to bring in a wide scope of issues that affect our wastewater systems and drainage mechanisms. Staff have been working with the trade waste users, so this proposed bylaw won't come as a significant surprise, and the draft bylaw captures activities that were previously overlooked by policies and the bylaw, and those same issues were probably some of our more problematic causes of problems within the network. So congratulations to the staff for pulling this paper together so promptly, and I'm sure it'll attract plenty of consultation from end users that may see a change and an impact on their practices.
Thank you. Councillor Brown, would you like to speak now?
Most of it's all been said, but I'm just really impressed with what the staff have come up with. It seems like an efficient and effective way of managing our waste, and a step change in the right direction to protecting our environment for generations to come. So I look forward to hearing what the public have to say about these changes.
Does anybody else have anything they'd like to say? Okay. I presume you won't need a right or reply, Councillor Simpson. Okay, so all of those in favour of the officer's recommendation, which does include a decision of council, please say aye or raise your hand. Against? Carried. Yeah, that's well done, that paper, and done with haste. Right, item 2 is water supply bylaw statement of proposal, and we have Drew. Is it Russell? Sorry, Russell.
Yep.
Yeah. You're away, Russell.
Excellent. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. So yes, thank you. Yes, good morning. So the water bylaw, so very similar with the trade waste and wastewater. It's a legislative requirement to update it. So it's come of age, and we needed to tidy up a couple of things with the old bylaw. One of them particularly was the Bayview water users. So historically, they had been identified to address loan and connection connection agreements that they had in the past, and we've tidied that up, and so that they are now considered as normal Napier urban connection. So they just really trying to bring in a bit more equity and fairness across there with the users. And also my understanding is that the term of the loan and the conditions of the loan have been met, and so there's no longer any need to have that in place. One of the other changes was in the fire hydrant use area. So we've, as part of the water safety plan and the reduction of our risk to our network through the water safety plan, is to we installed the Thames Street water take facility, and we have altered the bylaw to basically not make the fire hydrant water take as permissible as it has been in the past. So the only other comment that I'd like to mention is that part of the conversation with some of the commercial users around some of the bylaw changes in the past is about the volumetric charging and the discrepancy between the domestic and commercial unit rates. So we've, whilst it's not part of the bylaw process, it is part of the, we're addressing this through the annual plan process. So we're looking at making those into a single unit charge for water to address that that equity issue that's been raised by some of our major users. So those are, I'm happy to take questions on the report.
So any questions, please?
I've got a question.
Okay, Councillor Crystal.
So Russell, does that mean that Bayview people will move on to the same, so they won't have the volumetric charge anymore, so they will be the same as all the other Napier residents on their rates bill, the same charge? Is that what it means?
That is the proposal, yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
That's just
so
for them. Yeah.
Yeah, because their demand is the same as normal, urban residents inside the Napier boundary. So yeah, and it just tidies that up. Yeah.
Yes, just through the chair. I know that it came up a lot in the revenue financing consultation. So yeah, I imagine they'll be happy about that.
Yeah.
So Councillor Brown and myself are very happy about that, and I think Councillor McGrath might have brought it up at the time too. So some win-wins. Any other questions? Just swap around. Okay, no other questions. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Brown, was it? Seconded, Councillor Simpson. would you like to speak, Councillor Brown?
Yes, I think it's a great step in the right direction. The team have put a lot of effort into this, and I'm able to go quite quickly.
Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think it is important that our policies treat our residents equitably. There will obviously be other users of the network that are outside our traditional usage, and they will see changes in this bylaw that will contribute to them better understanding how their charges apply going forward. I think the big issue addressed in this bylaw is our network security, which is another step forward around the sustainability and reliability of our network. So just again, a note of thanks to the staff for progressing this work with haste.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, those are all in favour of the officer's recommendation, which does include the decision of council, please say aye or raise your hand. Against? Carried. Item 3, report on Three Waters reform program. And are you doing this, Russell, or Rebecca?
Yeah, no, Rebecca's, we have currently have an audit going on at the moment with regards to this reform process, so she's tied up with that. So
okay,
you have the pleasure of me again.
Thank you very much.
So, this is quite an operational report, and so I'm quite happy to take this as read. The only items that that I'd like to highlight was that we have a couple of areas where it's just coming to the end of the program, so that's about balancing the obviously that we're having potentially there's some lead-in times with some equipment, so we're just trying to manage that. There's a with how we're coming to the end of this project and making sure that we have this budget spent and allocated and dealt with before the end of June, and with the DIA. So we have got we've done some assessment and where those might be a risk, but we also have projects that are in place to meet those and spend those budgets and still meet the objectives that we agreed with the DIA. So and those are part of the conversations that Rebecca has with the DIA and the staff. So so no, it's just coming to the end of that that program. We've got a few more months to go, and we have got some. The program is. We're very happy with this progress on some of those key projects. Obviously, the low manganese, the bore water projects, they're coming along well. So I'm quite happy to take questions on the report.
So do I have any questions, please?
Yeah, just a question from me through the chair. So first of all, it's great to see the progress that's been made with regards to, in particular, the DIA funding, because of course we don't want to be at risk at losing that. And just I just wanted to clarify there, Russell, the comments you just made. So you have highlighted in your report a couple of risks in particular, and I just want to confirm that I heard correctly that if those particular issues aren't able to be resolved in time, do you have a backup project essentially that you can push go on to ensure that we don't lose that funding?
That's correct, yeah. So we can, because we've also got our business as usual water budgets, we have funding in there where we've got co-funding with the city budgets as well as the DIA budgets. So we can offset that ratio in those budgets so that we use the DIA funding. But we also have other sort of like backflow project that we can end up purchasing equipment and getting, so we have a list of backup projects is what I'm trying to say, yes. So yeah, and also those projects where we might be committed and there might be some delays, we have a budget in our normal water budget to pick up any cost that might fall into the next financial year. So yeah, it's not going to stop the work from getting done. So yeah.
Excellent. Sounds like it's all been planned out very well. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, good question and good answer.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions? Steph?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So just reiterating that the Crown Infrastructure Partnership is very flexible, back to Mayor Kirsten's question, and is really encouraging flexibility within the work program. So that has been an approach which we have applauded, and that is why we are working as Russell has just explained. So thank you, Mr. Chair. And if you can't see it, you've got Richard's hands up. Sorry, Councillor McGrath.
Councillor McGrath.
Yeah, Richard's fine.
Richard.
Just looking through the graph, a particular thing I've been following through are the Parks Water Bores investigation and implementation, number 4 on the graph there. I'm just wondering if I could have some information on that and what's being achieved with that money. Sorry.
The Parks Bores, yep. We had there's a couple of bits of work. We did some work in the botanical gardens. We found that the race was leaking, and we've improved the water use and efficiency in the botanical gardens by sealing that race. We also and lined and also looked at lining that pond as well. The other item, I'm just trying to recall, there was some irrigation efficiencies in one of the other parks. It just escapes me at this moment, but we're also, the next stage of this is looking at backflow preventers on each of our park connections. So this is one of the projects that we look at installing those connections, because there's potential for bore use on these parks, and we need to protect the water supply from any alternate water source. So because the park won't need to treat the water to then irrigate, but we need to protect the water supply, but also maintain a standby connection for the park. So that one, we have done quite a bit of work in improving water use. I think we did some work in the Centennial Park as well. That's the other one I remember. So because there was some leaks there.
Okay, any other questions, please? No. So do I have a mover for the officer's recommendation, please? Councillor Crystal, seconded by Mayor Wise. Would you like to speak, Rhonda?
Thank you, Councillor Price. No, it's really good to see these projects getting nearly complete in a lot of them, and hopefully some nice clean water for our citizens, and that's been a huge issue for us as a council, so that's what I'm looking forward to.
Okay, and Mayor Wise, would you like to speak now?
Thank you, through the chair. And I do just want to congratulate all the team for how well this funding has been managed. We knew there was always a potential risk around losing some of it. So actually being able to combine it with our own internal funding in a way that gives us the flexibility to ensure that we can achieve the best outcomes possible is fantastic. And as Councillor Crystal mentioned, in particular, the new bores is something that we've been waiting for a while now. So really excited that they're on track and due to be operational in a few months' time. And I also just wanted to make the comment that although we've accepted this funding, the $12.51 million from DIA, which was part of the National Reform Program, just wanting to assure our community, but that by no means does this commit us to supporting or being part of the Three Waters Reform Program. And we are still actively advocating on behalf of the community in terms of trying to achieve a better proposal for all of New Zealand. So, I think we've said many times before, collectively across the country, all councils are in agreement that reform is necessary. It is the proposal that has been put forward by central government that we're unhappy with, and we will continue to have conversations with central government about that and advocate on behalf of our community. So thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any other comments? No. Rhonda, would you like a right of reply? I mean, Councillor Crystal? No. So all of those in favour with the officer's recommendation, please say aye or raise their hand. Against? Carried. Thank you, Russell.
Thank you.
Item 4, Decorative Paving Shop Entrance Policy. Robin Melly.
Thank you, Chair. Kia ora koutou. It's a fairly minor item, probably the shortest report I've written in 25 years, actually. But the decorative paving shop entrances policy is a formal council policy which has sat on the books since 1991, when Emerson Street was upgraded. It gave retailers and landowners the opportunity to have small customizations included in front of their buildings, and you can still see some of them now. A lot of them have now reference businesses that have now gone, so you'll see there's a dollar sign outside of a real estate agent and a wine glass outside a jeweller's, but it's not really been of any relevance since that work was finished in 1992. However, it has still sat on the books, and so to withdraw that policy we do need formal council approval, hence it being in front of you today. I'm happy to answer any questions, but this predates my time in Napier and in New Zealand, so I may not be able to give you all of the detail, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? No questions? Do I have a mover, please, for the officer's recommendation? Councillor Simpson, seconded Councillor McGrath. I bet you can't talk longer than Robin did.
I bet I can't. Thank you. through you, Mr. Chair. I think it's always handy if we can remove bureaucracy that doesn't need to any longer be on the books. So I'm all for removing a policy that no longer needs to exist.
Councillor McGrath? Is he there?
He's waved.
You're right. Okay, all those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please raise your hand or say aye. Against? Carried. All right, item 5 is the capital program delivery, and I was nearly going to call you Councillor Kingsford, but John Kingsford, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Kia ora koutou, everybody, and no, I don't have the pleasure of having such an auspicious title. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everybody. Once again, capital program report. So we obviously have the table at the back, which we may have questions on. I'll take you through some of the key parts of the report. Firstly, as we alluded to in a previous report, COVID is continuing to have an impact on material cost and supply chain with materials availability. And as you can see in the report, we've identified a couple of things that are hitting our programs of work, particularly the cost of pipe has gone up 50% in the last 12 months, 11% of that increase in the last 3 months. So where possible, we're working with our contractors to, once the contract's confirmed, place their orders and have materials shipped. And we have moved away from what perhaps under conventional times would have been payment on installation. We're now moving to payment upon materials arriving on site and being or in a secure location to help them with that change in approach and to lock in our materials prices as per our contracts. Obviously, some materials are pretty hard to stockpile. Concrete, for example, pretty hard to stockpile that ahead of time. So potentially our contracts are subject to price increase. We have good contracts in place and methodology and processes to work through those, and so we're treating those on a case-by-case basis. We have a number of projects going through different phases of delivery, from scoping, where we're working pretty closely with our activity and asset managers to scope projects in this year's program, and I'm now in the process of booking in workshops with activity and asset managers to look at next year's program in line with our year-end forecasts and carryover process, with a view to having carryovers incorporated into our annual plan and not post the annual plan, trying to smooth that process. Hopefully we'll be able to report more on that in future meetings. Obviously those meetings haven't taken place yet, but the intention is there. So looking to work quite closely both with the finance team on the money side of our projects, and also with our asset and activity managers around how we can collectively progress our capital program. We've got a few projects that have gone to tender or are going to tender. Perhaps the most notable out of those is the Pandora Industrial Pipeline remediation. So the Three Waters team have been working pretty hard on that, and through our program delivery team, we've assisted them in getting that to the market. Essex Street Playground, Maggie's Way, the next stage of that Maggie's Way is underway, and so some good progress being made there. Some items are at risk in terms of materials availability, so we'll be looking to manage those closely. Projects nearing Erect completion. Centennial Hall, I believe we reported last meeting, the floor had been completed. The court lighting has now been completed, and the project team are finishing off the remediation of other flood damage, and we're pleased to report that despite the deluge that we had before dark and overnight, the floor remains dry this morning. So good work from a number of teams there to get out proactively and check on it, and from our city services team to scramble down there and make sure that our drains were working in and around the park. So thanks to all those involved there. Deborah's already mentioned fire flows, so I believe all of those sections of water mains are going through commissioning process now for final completion. A few others there that have already been mentioned. Perhaps some of the other aspects here, we have gone through quite a period of discovery with regard to constraints in our program delivery processes, and certainly we believe more guidance material is needed to help those that are perhaps not in project work every day or as a key part of their role. So you'll see there we're working on our project management framework, looking to make that fit for purpose, and perhaps have more selection in terms of project size and complexity, and streamlining process depending on cost and risk. Obviously, low value, low risk, we can probably drop some steps out of the process, and you might see that as taking a little bit more risk, but when risk is low, that is acceptable. We are pulling together some project management 101 training. Previously, this has been done by an organisation that does that training face to face. That's a little bit difficult at the moment, so we're looking to change that up and hopefully bring that online in the near future. And we'll follow that up with further training on any changes to our project management framework. We're also working closely with our management accountants, project accountants, and the finance team around project financial reporting. This is very much a manual exercise at the moment and takes a number of people many hours to work through every month. So we're looking to improve on that process and streamline that and make that much more efficient and effective and reliable. And in support of reports like this, but also reporting up to project stakeholders and to governance structures over projects, we're looking to improve on our program and project reporting through cycle. Obviously, part of that is improving the uptake of cycle and ensuring our projects are reported on the cycle. And so that's part of the training material that we are developing going forward. All that will be incorporated into a contemporary project management manual with training that wrapped around that to roll out to staff. So big push on providing the right support and the right guidance to our people involved in projects. In line with our activity and asset managers, we're also looking at our procurement opportunities around bundling of projects into larger projects and or bundling of procurement opportunities around multiple projects. So that's always a work on. We do have new strategic procurement leads starting in the next couple of weeks. So hopefully that will enable us to push that along a bit more quickly than what we've been able to lean into to date. We are facing some capacity issues in our industry. Some of our tenders are only receiving one tender, which it's great that we're getting a tender, but and any tenderer doesn't know how many tenders we're going to receive, but that is an indication that our contractors are picking and choosing a wee bit more carefully, perhaps. So we've got to continue to think about how we keep our work attractive to our contractors. It's probably a bit of a moving feast at the current point in time. So that's probably enough of a blurb from me. Perhaps we, Mr. Chair, throw it open to questions on any of what I've talked to that's in the report or any projects on our table, perhaps.
So do we have any questions, please? Councillor Crystal. Mute.
I'm sure lots of people would like to mute me. I know it's through the chair. Thank you, John, for that. And I know it's of great interest to our community as to an ETA of the Centennial Hall reopening. So do we have that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, barring any hiccups, we're hoping to have that available by the end of next month.
Cool. So end of April.
Yeah, hopefully that date doesn't bounce around at all, but with COVID and availability of materials and resources, I wouldn't say that's a question. Thank you.
Thanks for that question, Councillor Crystal. Very interesting. In the basketball world. Do we have any other questions, please? Mayor Wise?
Thank you, and through the chair, and this is probably more a question for Adele, just with regards to the project financial reporting, and I guess acknowledging that we do have some limitations across all of our financial reporting, and I was just wanting a bit of a reminder in terms of what we have planned with regard to a review of our overall financial management information system, because that would obviously be quite critical in terms of how we progress our project financial reporting as well.
So kia ora, and through you, Mr. Chair, Adele is actually chairing a strategic finance committee meeting this morning, so it's not with us. I'll throw back to John in a minute because we were working through his work program of which one stage is an upgrade to the financial management system. So Mayor Wise, you have articulated the problem definitely, as has John in his report, with the amount of manual application that we have to do with respect to the integration of our project management system cycle and our financial management system at this time. John was working through what the best process looks like in terms of the capital program delivery to be at the stage where we really do understand the needs of the financial management system in the current operating environment. And we loosely agreed that that would be one of my key priority areas for the next financial year. So I'll throw to John if he has anything further to add, but we can also see if Carolyn has any comments on behalf of Adele. So through you, Mr. Chair, if I could go back to the Director of Program Delivery, please.
Yes.
Thank you, Steph, and through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, our piece of work is about perhaps taking a fresh look at the level of financial reporting that is fit for purpose for projects, without the constraints of what our current system can provide us. So more of a blue sky look at what we need to be reporting on from a project perspective. We can then compare that to what our current system can provide us, and whether or not there are any gaps, and whether those gaps can be provided by our current system, and if not, that will then inform perhaps the functional user requirements for any other future system. And I did see a comment in the chat pop up from Caroline, but Caroline's online now, so shall we call on her to finish that comment off?
Okay, Caroline.
Thank you, and through the chair. Yes, we have funding set aside in the long-term plan for an upgrade to the ERP or the finance system. We are currently about to undergo the preliminary planning for what we actually require from either a new system or an upgrade, but also taking into account and thinking long-term where we're going to be heading with the Three Waters reform as well, and also what other councils in the region are doing with their ERP systems.
Thank you. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you very much. And just one further completely unrelated question, if I may, Chair.
Yes.
Through to John. John, I just note that in the summary table that the Priority Road Corridor Improvement Project has been deferred. Just wondered if you could provide us with a little bit more information around that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I could come back to you on that one, Kirsten. I'm a bit light on the detail with that, unless we have Robin still online or Deborah that might be able to shed some light on that. It's back with the sponsor, so I haven't got a lot of information or knowledge on that, I'm afraid.
Do we, Robin, are you there, able to assist?
I am here, Chair, but I completely missed the Mayor's question. I'm sorry.
Robin, I was just asking about the Priority Road Corridor Improvement Project, which in the table it's commenting that it's been deferred, and whether there was any additional information around that.
So through you, Chair, that's just so we can work with mission development and work through any land purchases we need to do, which are going to sort of take us through till next year. So the project itself isn't deferred, but there's no sort of design activity going on at the moment until we've resolved some of those land issues.
Thank you, that's really useful.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? No. Do I have a mover and seconder for the officer's recommendation, please? Moved by, someone got their hand, I can't see. Councillor Brosnan, seconded by Councillor Simpson. Did I get that right? Councillor Brosnan, would you like to speak?
No, quite happy with the report, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Simpson?
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. Just a compliment to the staff, the continuous improvement in this reporting, the visibility of our projects, the way the reporting is presented, and the internal processes that are being continually improved, and the forecast for even more improvement is a very promising state of affairs. So I'd just like to thank staff for their efforts in providing us clarity around some of our activities.
Thank you. Is there any other comments, please? Okay, all those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please raise their hand or say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Right, item 6 is the lease of reserve Danish Delight. Is Brian or Jenny?
Good morning. This is a pretty straightforward item. We're simply seeking approval from council pursuant to the Reserves Act to grant a new lease to the Danish Delight ice cream kiosk between the by the children's playground on Marine Parade Reserve and the bike track. It's been there since 2002. I don't have any issues to report, but happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions? No. Do I have a mover and a seconder for this, please?
Sorry,
Councillor
if I
Grant.
could,
Sorry.
sorry, through the chair, if I could just clarify, Councillor Mawson just did raise the issue prior to the meeting that in that map we've got the star in the wrong place. So when we formalise the lease, we've got to put the star further to the right. At the moment, it's over the public toilet. So thank you, Councillor Mawson, for highlighting that. Other than that, I have no further issues.
Thank you, Councillor Mawson. That's very good. Okay. Councillor McGrath, did you want to comment?
Just through the chair, I was going to move the recommendation, if that's okay.
Okay, I thought we'd done that. And seconded by Councillor Brosnan.
Okay. Yeah, just like to say that Danish Delights is a bit of an icon along the marine parade these days, so it's good that it's still up and running and ticking. And I'm sure we would have been better off having a council workshop trip down there prior to this, just so we could see the place. Maybe that's food for thought for next time.
Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor Brosnan, would you like to comment?
No, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I think Councillor Richard summed that up very well.
Well done. Okay, all those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please say aye. Against, or raise your hand. Carried. So I'll now adjourn the Sustainable Napier meeting for 5 minutes. Is that all right, Deputy Mayor?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. So we'll start at 20 past, which is 4 minutes. Thank you.